Tonight on Newshour, over 2 years of war in Sudan has shattered lives, especially for children, with millions displaced and the world looking away. We ask, how close are we to losing an entire generation? Well, as Sudan enters its third year of armed conflict, the scale of the suffering has reached catastrophic proportions, particularly for the very youngest in society. Aid agencies now call it the most devastating humanitarian crisis anywhere in the world, yet it remains dangerously underreported. Over 9 million children have been uprooted, more than in any other country. Many now live without shelter, education, or access to clean water. Malnutrition is rising fast. Families, especially in the north of the country, are arriving at gathering sites with only what they can carry on their person. The response from the international community has been limited. Aid corridors are blocked and large parts of the country are completely inaccessible. Tonight, we speak to our very own Anastasia Lavrina, who joins me in the studio to reflect on her recent documentary from northern Sudan. But first, let's take a look at this report.
The humanitarian crisis in Sudan is deepening day by day. United Nations spokesperson Stéphane Dujarric said at a press briefing in New York that ongoing armed clashes, mass displacement of people, and the rapid spread of diseases are further worsening the situation in the country.
North Darfur state artillery shelling continues to impact residential areas of El Fasher in the Abu Shuk camp for internally displaced people. Local sources report daily civilian casualties, and recent days has seen an intensification of bombardments at night.
The situation in South Kordofan is no different. Recent fighting has forced nearly 2,800 people, mostly women and children, to flee from the town of Dibabad. These displaced individuals are now scattered across the Al-Quaz area and other parts of West Kordofan, living in extremely difficult conditions. Their access to basic necessities, such as shelter, medical care and protection, is severely limited.
The situation in the state capital, Kadugli, has also been very seriously deteriorating in recent weeks, with intense shelling and humanitarian access largely cut off. In northern state, authorities report that about 6,000 people who fled from North Darfur, Khartoum, and West Kordofan due to insecurity arrived in Daba in northern state between the 12th and 22nd of May. Meanwhile, a cholera outbreak in Khartoum state is worsening at an alarming rate, we are told. Our humanitarian partners in the state report an 80% increase in suspected cases over the past 2 weeks, bringing the total number of cases to more than 8,500.
Dujarric noted that with the approaching rainy season, the United Nations and its partners have pre-positioned 30,000 tons of aid supplies in warehouses located in Janina, Nyala, and Tawila. These supplies are intended to support humanitarian operations across the Kordofan and Darfur regions. Meanwhile, aid deliveries to West and Central Darfur will be facilitated through cross-border corridors from Chad. However, the crisis in Sudan is not limited to physical insecurity. There is also a growing education emergency. According to the UN, 250,000 children in North Darfur alone, 250,000, have lost access to schooling. Across the country, millions of children are currently unable to attend school. The UN urges the international community to provide more flexible, timely and large-scale financial support for the humanitarian response. It also emphasized the urgent need for unhindered access along all necessary routes so that aid workers can reach people in need without obstruction.
Joining me now is my colleague and host of Inside Politics and Frontline, Anastasia Lavrina. Anastasia, thank you so much for coming in to join us in the studio.
Thank you for inviting me.
Very, very hard to overstate the seriousness of this situation. You and I clearly know each other very well. We work together. Take us back to those days when you were just getting the idea of travelling to northern Sudan to create this documentary. Talk us through the thinking and the planning involved.
Well, indeed, as you rightly mentioned previously, the situation there is devastating. And the problem is the world doesn't talk enough about the situation there. Every day we listen a lot about what's happening between Russia and Ukraine. Now it's Israel, Iran, any other parts of the world. But how many news we can read what's happening in Sudan, where the war is lasting over 2 years, where there is a real civil war, when Sudanese is killing Sudanese. So the idea was to go to the places which became invisible for the global world, to talk with the people, with the civilians, with the survivors who stayed there during the war. And since the time of Khartoum, the capital was liberated maybe a month before, we decided to be the first and until now the only journalist who got an access to Salha region in Omdurman city to see what's happened there. So Khartoum is completely destroyed city. There is no electricity, there is no water, and still very limited number of people return back. In Salha, I'm sorry for saying that, but we even witnessed some dead bodies in the streets. We witnessed the mass grave discovered there. So sensitive moments, and it was very hard for all our team, for AnewZ, to see this reality on the ground, but we are happy that we could show it to the global world.
I mean, let me just ask you about that, because I think it's important and viewers will find it interesting. What happens, I mean, you're a very experienced journalist. We talk about these terrible situations all the time. Often we're in studios, we're speaking to correspondents, reporting on the ground. Sometimes we're on the ground ourselves. But sometimes as a journalist, there's a moment, isn't there, when the human being and the professional collide, when something is so poignant that it just cuts through and really gets to the heart of a person. Can you tell us about those situations? Because I know, as a colleague of yours, that happened to you on this documentary, didn't it?
The people, their struggle. They lost everything. They don't have home. They live in the shelters sometimes. They still have the power to move forward. And we even got the invitation from one family. They invited us to share the dinner together. They try to show their hospitalities. They have nothing, but still, they want to show that they are very happy to meet the foreigners, especially journalists who can bring this reality on the ground. And they're saying, every time they're speaking about the past, the present, and the future, they're saying, Inshallah, there will be peace in our country. And what we want actually, to live in a peaceful conditions with our brothers and sisters. You know, Sudan is a very rich country. The rich, I mean, there's enough gold to be exported to other countries, and it's being done. But unfortunately, in some villages, people are still very poor. And despite of this richness, they don't care much about the gold or any other sources they have. They care about the families, they think about humanity, and everything what they want is a peaceful solution of this long-lasting civil war. Therefore, we were too much inspired. And one more thing, Sudan is far away geographically from Azerbaijan, but they do know Azerbaijan very well. They know what's happened in Karabakh when Azerbaijan just made sure that we returned the territories which were under the occupation of Armenia for about 30 years. They do know how it's happened.
So people that you met, unprompted, were discussing that with you?
Yes, they say that we admire what Azerbaijan did 4 and 5 years ago, how you return your previously occupied lands, and how you're doing your best to restore. Actually, people there, they do know very well Azerbaijan and Turkey. Turkey has also very, I would say, strong presence in the region, and they do rely on Azerbaijan, the countries like Azerbaijan, Turkey, to spread the information on what's happening in Sudan, to bring more global attention and the attention of the, let's say, international institutions like the United Nations, because they need assistance, they need more financial support to be provided to restore, to rebuild the country. As already mentioned, Khartoum is completely destroyed, so they need huge investments to rebuild the cities and make sure that the people live in the proper conditions in the future there.
And you mentioned families there. You got the opportunity to meet and spend time with families. normal families, regular families, just like any other family anywhere else in the world. Many families at times will have to cope with a crisis, an abnormal, difficult situation that's stressful. But to live under continuous crisis as a family, what was your sense of what that was like? How resourceful did people have to be? Did you get a sense of the emotional toll on those families too?
It was, first of all, it was very emotionally for our team. As for example, traveling from Port Sudan to Khartoum, the only option you can travel by car, that is the Khartoum International Airport, from where the war actually started on April 15, 2023, it's completely destroyed. So you can go by car only 15 hours. Without the air conditioner, without any proper, let's say, facilities around, you go this straight long ahead, then you're coming to the places where there is no electricity. When we arrived, it was 11th day when there were no electricity and no water. That's why the Khartoum city is now the place where there are a lot of diseases like cholera, for example, as it was mentioned by the representative of the United Nations also just recently. In time when we were there, it was just the beginning, but now it's escalated. So you're arriving to the place where people are, the hospitals are fully with the sick people. And you're talking with a woman, with the children, with the fathers of families. And the woman, by the way, impressed me very much. They say that this war taught us to be strong. The schools were closed for about 2 years because they were the rapid support forces who controlled everything, and they were saying that they're bringing democracy, but in reality the only thing they were doing is just destroying everything. And the woman said, of course it was very hard time for us, but we survived. We learned how to keep our family in a time when the men itself were fighting in the front line, and our children, they studied at home. And now we are surviving, and we become even stronger than we were before. So you're being impressed that in such harsh conditions, without anything what we consider as a normal thing to have, a glass of water, for example, they don't have it properly. They can get it from the river, which is not quite, let's say, clean to drink immediately, and they don't have electricity to boil the water, so they're drinking it. In the same places, they're getting water to cook something, to have some food. But still, again, as mentioned before, they are willing to move forward. They're willing to communicate, to stay together, to make sure that the rapid support forces, they're not back to the Khartoum city. And I will say that in the last days, we can see that the army, the governmental forces are moving forward. In Sudan, there is a real big problem. Why Sudanese is killing the Sudanese? Because of the outside intervention. It's a huge division in between. And still there are countries who are providing some support for the rebels, and there are the countries who are making sure that the government forces still keep control. And because of that outside intervention, two sides cannot define the solution. And since the last statement made in June, just recently, two sides are not willing to continue the peaceful talks. And the only solution they see is the war.
I was watching the documentary Frontline, and obviously viewers can now watch that across all of our platforms. When I was watching it, one of the many things that struck me was wondering the effect that the process had on you. I can remember on a previous assignment meeting children who'd been victims of the conflict in Gaza, and I can remember distinctly feeling utterly helpless. I couldn't think, particularly as someone who professionally communicates, I had nothing to say. There was nothing I felt I could say that in any way could possibly make the situation any better. Did you get any sense of that helpless feeling how did it take its toll on you when you were there and you were seeing it right in front of you?
Previously, you know this very well, our team also traveled to DRC, Congo. In that case, of course, the situation was even worse because we met the children who had nothing to eat. They were asking for some food or some money we could provide. Here, probably it's a very good sign, the children had enough food in that time, but now unfortunately from the news I can get the information that the famine is also prevails in some states in Sudan. But that time, the children themselves were feeling lucky because of the end of the conflict in some parts. And being there personally, I could feel this responsibility of AnewZ particularly to bring the information, to make it widely spread, not only in Azerbaijan, in our region, but far beyond. BBC, Al Jazeera, and some other global media channels, they also present the information, but within the last 3 or 4 months, I couldn't see any specific call for the global community to bring more attention there. So I felt there, being surrounded by the children, by the people who have nothing to do with the war, who just want to survive and live in peaceful conditions, to make sure that the voices of these ordinary people heard widely within the international institutions. And I hope that our documentary could help to spread this truth among the people globally, and probably it will be a small step forward in the solution of this war.
Yeah, and again, that's something that came through for me watching the final piece of work, was this sense of letting people speak without people like us finishing their sentences.
Yes.
Right, in their own words, in their own way. That's where you get the most accurate information. Finally, Anastasia, such a tragic, almost incomprehensible situation for many of these families. But was there any hope? Were there any signs of positivity that you took as you left Sudan?
Yes, of course. We spoke even with officials who are saying that, let's say, Port Sudan, the city where the administration is now resigning, is quite safe. Actually, that city was safe within the last couple of years before the May 2025, when it was attacked by drones. And by the way, being there, we also experienced the drone attack. We were asked to stay a day in a hotel. We were not allowed to leave because the government made sure, the militaries were sure that we are safe and protected. But in reality, they say that the city is quite, let's say, protected at the moment, from military side, from economic development, as Port Sudan is, we'll say, it's a gateway for the country since the start of the war.
Sorry to interrupt, you had really good support from those government agencies, didn't you?
Yes.
Which is an essential part of a project like this.
Indeed, we made an official request asking the permission to go there. You know, Sudan is a closed country. In case if you travel there and you want to have any kind of report, you should get a special permission. The militants are everywhere. Everybody has the weapons, and in the case they see any unsafe situation, they can use it. Therefore, it's better to have a special, let's say, permission stating that you are representing the press. And in that case, of course, they are willing to support you, to show you all the places you're willing to visit. But the permissions are very required since the beginning you're there. You cannot just take your phone, go outside and shoot. Even the small places where the people are resting, you are not allowed. You should get a special permission for that. And no one permission. In every single city, you should have the separate permission for shootings. So it was a long procedure, but we got this access. And talking with the people, with the officials, with the families, with the children, they have the hope, especially when the Khartoum was liberated. It gave the power for the people to feel the freedom, to feel that the government can take control. And now they want to make sure that the people, the refugees and the IDPs who are staying in the North Darfur, the territory which is now controlled by the rapid support forces, still is also to be liberated. People don't have money to travel far away from their homes. Therefore, they hope that the government forces to come there as soon as possible, to liberate them and to provide the conditions for the future peaceful coexistence in between of the Sudanese.
The picture you paint, Anastasia, of the people that you spent time with is, of course, of people who are suffering, of course, of people who are looking for support, looking for help, but not of a powerless people. People who are proud, who are getting on with the business of day-to-day life, who are actively involved in rebuilding their society.
We met the volunteers who have nothing. We went to the hospital in Khartoum city, and there was a guy, his name is Moomin. He's very brave. He lost 5 of his friends, closest friends, in that hospitals during the shootings when the drone came, and he was explaining how dangerous it was for them. his team of volunteers, 30 or 40 people, as he said, getting the financial support from outside, from Sudanese who live far away from Sudan itself, and using this money, they're purchasing the pills, the medicine, something that is needed for the homeless people. And the people are coming and without paying anything can get the medicine support for free, the medical support, and we could see a lot of people there. They're coming asking for anything, for the pills, for painkillers or something. And he was saying how the hospital itself hosted probably around 10,000 people during the time of war, out of which 3,000 unfortunately died. And he could see it, everything with his eyes. But still he's saying that I will continue staying here and we will support the people, the homeless. So one part of the hospital is fully with those who suffered due to the war, and there's still the building where a lot of people are coming due to the new types of diseases like cholera, which is also affecting the lives of thousands now in Sudan.
Anastasia, we're now well over 2 years into year 3 now of this conflict. We said at the top of the show that this is a war that, despite the devastation, sometimes has been drowned out in the global media noise and all of the other difficult and tragic conflicts that are taking place. Do you feel a sense of responsibility now that we keep telling these stories and we make sure that people don't forget about Sudan?
Yes, of course. I'm very thankful for AnewZ, for everybody who supported this idea to travel there to shoot. It's not easy. We changed 3 planes while traveling there. You spent almost 1 day to go to Sudan and back. So now I feel this personal responsibility, and I'm more than sure that AnewZ will do its best to make sure that many people in the region far beyond to watch this documentary. Probably there are some Sudanese who may decide to help the government, the people. Maybe some of those who are living far away have some relatives and they're very much interested in what's happening in Sudan. So they can watch the documentary and make a decision on what's going on. And maybe it will be a good signal for those who are making the decision, for those who are staying outside the country but still willing to support the government, to avoid any kind of intervention from outside that disturb the situation, rather than to support two sides to find a peaceful solution. So now it's our responsibility to make sure that the film is promoted, watched by many people, and also to think, I guess it's right time to think about the next destination now, to make sure that AnewZ is bringing the voices of those who are stayed neglected for much time. And let's make impossible possible.
Right, it's a great point to end on. A signal, as you say, a signal for hopefully a lasting peace. Anastasia, thank you very much indeed for coming into the studio. Well, that is all for this edition of NewsHour. In Sudan, childhood is now marked by displacement, hunger and fear. Yet the world's attention remains elsewhere. As the conflict enters its 3rd year, the need for action has never been greater. From all of us here at AnewZ, thanks for watching.